Welcome everyone to, I think this is now episode 7 of what's becoming a absolute mainstay in everyone's podcast library. So this is the GigCX Decoded podcast, and here we are to talk about how GigCX can play a role in the modern world. And so this is all about giving people a bit more information about what GigCX is, for anyone that's listening to understand how it could benefit them, and also what are the main challenges around it. So purpose of the show is to educate. We bring on people that know a lot more about these sorts of things than myself, and we bring on some industry powerhouses, of which today we have Neil Rae from VXI Solutions. Neil, lovely to meet you.
Very nice to meet you as well.
Welcome to the show. So we're going to get into the main structure, but I think it was probably a good place to start. Give our listeners a bit about you and VXI and you know what you guys get up to. I think it's fair to say you've been in this trade for a little while.
I have. Happy to be here. So I'm Neil Rae. So I'm the Chief Digital Officer of VXI. We are a technology-led contact center organization, and my role is a very unique role. It's been 20 some odd years in this organization. Maybe you can see that by way of my white beard that started red when I jumped into the industry. But ultimately, we are a world-leading contact center organization, and my role as Chief Digital Officer is to really embrace new and emerging technology and trends, and make sure that we leverage those trends to unlock value within both our customer and client base, but then also within the employee base. And gig is, to me, a very fascinating concept to be discussing today.
Yeah, great stuff. Well, it's lovely to have you on the show. We find that we as a company and as a solution, it sort of sits alongside a lot of what sort of the outsourcing and BPO world does, and as you know, we're in a harmonious relationship with VXI, and there's opportunities that we're all keen to look at. But so we're going to get an industry perspective here from you and from the BPO world. You said you're in a unique role. Does that make you unique, or is it your role's unique?
I'll say a little bit about on both sides. I think I'm unique. I'm always my authentic self.
You are.
But I think again we're in a unique time within the industry, and that's one of the reasons I'm very proud to be a part of VXI is looking at how we deal with these unique tailwinds and headwinds in the industry. And I do feel that VXI has a unique approach to how to address the needs of the market, both consumer and buyers.
Yeah, well, I mean, no surprise, I'm going to absolutely advocate that. I mean, we get to work, the origins of our business come from the BPO world, and we get to talk to lots of BPOs, and VXI is a breath of fresh air when it comes to the technology and the way of working and the nimbleness and all that sort of stuff. So you're breaking the muscle memory of what a BPO looks like, in my humble opinion. But there we go. Right, so let's get into it. We have a general chit chat. We'll throw some questions at you just to get your perspectives, and we'll see where the conversation goes. But so I mean, the first thing really is I'd like to open up these sessions with is, from your perspective, given where we are in the middle of October, in what has been a pretty tumultuous year, what are the big things that are affecting the CX industry right now? And by the way, we've only got about 20 minutes. So
so keep it brief, which can be difficult. I think there's 3 different lenses that we as an organization look through things, and I've always done, which is, if you think about the changing headwinds as it relates to the employee experience, I think the pandemic has changed the employee expectations on where they want to work and how they want to work. So I think that definitely is something that we are seeing as an industry, how to look to retain our staff, how to make sure that we have flexibility within our working environment. It has a material financial impact, but then also there's a direct correlation to the employee experience and the customer experience. So again, different expectations, higher expectations from the employee perspective. That then moves to the consumer. The consumer, the pandemic has accelerated a lot of expectations in the digital world. And you think about effortless and you think about resolution. That's another very interesting changing trend, evolving trend, not just in the last year, but perhaps the last 3 years. Again, the pandemic really moved and shifted a lot of buying dynamics to the digital space. And then the third element is technology. If you look at the role of technology and how it's also looking to transform our customer experience industry. So you think about the application of self-help and non-digital agent assisted interactions, and how we address kind of this EX to the CX to the technology experience, and how we bring this into a new and emerging operating environment. So a lot of very unique trends going on right now in the industry.
Yeah, I think the thing I picked out most from that, Neil, was the pace. It feels like every year. I mean, and I've been in this industry a long time, more from a technology perspective than anything else. I remember when IVR hit the world, and social media hit the world, and chatbots hit the world, and virtual assistants. And then the pace was frenetic. But it feels like the pace of adoption, both technology aside, but also the expectations is significantly different it's ever been. And I wonder if COVID really sped that up, because it changed. In my opinion, there was the mindset, if you like, that organizations were, we bring the people to the work, right? There's a workplace, we bring you to the work, and that's where it goes. And what happened was the advent, technology really increased in the background, so that the stability of broadband as one, and the collaboration. We all then remember our days in lockdown where we're all on Zoom or Teams or webinars and that sort of stuff. But it was stable. It worked fine. If that had happened 5 years prior, it probably wouldn't. So you were forced into doing something because of COVID. But then the technology infrastructure was okay. I'm sure there were a few information security officers out there that had to just put their fingers in their ears when they sent all their agents home to carry on working, but they've probably taken them out by now. So is that? But what it changed in my from where I was looking at it was, people were like, this is okay. Like everyone's at home, everyone's still working, and that whole mindset from an employer perspective that people aren't going to work if they're not in the office where we get to see them, and the technology then made it okay. The quality and the kind of work ethic seemed to be fine, and that's then filtered out into the customer. So the customers don't want to be tethered to a certain place, channel, location, the same as the employee base. And it seems like all this is now made the next generation of adoption speed up much more quickly.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. It's what I like to refer to the patience of impatience, right? Just the employees and customers do have a degree of patience, but also impatience towards resolution and making it easy. Whether that be from their working environment, as you said and referenced, sort of this hybrid is here to stay. Whether it be working at home virtually or working in an office, but then also where individuals want to work and how they want to work. And it's the same for consumers. Consumers have a patience. There was the introduction because of the pandemic and the velocity of change and pace of change. But then they also have the impatience on make it easy, make it effortless. How do I connect with somebody that is a champion of a brand that can help me resolve my issue in the quickest means possible in whatever my channel of choice is. So I think that patience and impatience, both at the employee side and the consumer side, and this is where I think the organizations that will make a significant and material difference are the ones that recognize that and try and enable solutions that make it better, both from the employee side and the consumer side.
Yeah, I agree. So, I mean, this is nudging nicely into the whole concept of GigCX, really, because it provides, like you said, a brand, the ability for people to connect to brand ambassadors. How would you, probably putting you on the spot a bit here, but how would you describe what GigCX is? Because whenever I come on the show, I normally do that, but it sounds a bit like I'm trying to sell it. So, but I'm always interested in how would you describe to your friend or family what GigCX is?
Yeah, I think it's an option in a new and emerging channel. We at VXI, we really embrace self-help. We look at non-agent assisted interactions, making it easy for the consumer, but there's going to be contact types and there's going to be interactions that are required. And how do you enable that in a environment where you've got some flexibility, flexibility from a workforcing standpoint, flexibility from a resolution, and then ultimately, how do you recognize consumers' buying dynamics where they want to work with individuals that are brand ambassadors?
Mm.
They feel there's a higher degree of confidence and trust when they're engaging with somebody that is very passionate about the brand. And so, again, if you think about this trend of the employee experience and providing flexible solutions, and then how do you look at the obsession of customers and making it easy and focusing in on a
Mm.
resolution, this is where Gig, provides a extremely unique solution. You're allowing the employees to have some flexibility. You're allowing individuals that are very passionate about brands.
Mm.
And this is one of the strong points that I look at with Limitless. I think you're a world class organization that's creating a software solution that connects the two. That provides the appropriate level of crowdsourcing and flexibility from an employee standpoint, but then also connects customers to individuals that understand the brand and can have an easy speed to resolution.
Mm.
And again, I think it's a very new and emerging trend. Traditionally, it was sort of self-help, and then moved
Yeah.
into a traditional contact center, a human being in a chair. But Gig, I think, is definitely a new and emerging channel of choice, and for both businesses and for consumers.
Yeah, it's a neat way of putting it. I think like you say, there was a big sort of rush for self-help. So it's like that, sometimes the best demand is no demand, so self-help. And then you had the kind of rush for automation around chatbots and virtual assistants. And then you've still got obviously the need for people to be sat on seats. Now, where those seats are is obviously changing, but where GigCX sort of plays a role in that is that benefit of both ways, because it's people, but it's also providing them with actual domain expertise, and it can drive a shift left strategy. It can drive them onto self-help in the future.
Mhm.
But I would doubt anybody in this world would question the principle of sometimes, if I had a problem with a product, would I prefer to talk to somebody who's got the product or not? Now, okay, there's nuances behind that, but as a broad principle, the answer is going to be a resounding yes, right? And the sometimes in the contact center world, people are, and I can testify to this, and I've talked about this on the show before, which is like my first ever job was in a contact center, right? I was 18 years old, so not long ago, and I was working in this aftercare for like consumer electronics. So you bought anything from a store, and then you needed like technical support after it. And you might have been lucky enough to come through to me. Now, I had absolutely no brand loyalty whatsoever. It was just a job, right? It was an entry job. Stayed there for a couple of years. Really enjoyed it. That was my first kind of white collar job, really, and I loved it. But I had no relationship to the brand or the industry. It wasn't a thing. It was just a job. It's a means to an end. And because of the wage pressures of contact centers being typically a cost center, i.e., they get given a budget to work to in relation to how much is sold up front. The drive is always to serve it as cheaply as possible with as high quality as possible. But we all know that it puts the pressure on the cost, where it's typically just above kind of minimum wage. It's in that sort of area.
Yeah.
So it attracts the sort of people like me, 20 or 25 years ago, where I take it as a job with no relationship to the brand. And then that means you've got this sort of army of people that are working, to represent brands, but aren't necessarily don't have any relationship with the brand. And I always have this sort of thing in the back of my mind. And so imagine you walk into like I don't know, like an Apple call center, or one of the other ones that say, and you go, right, everyone stop what they're doing, put your hand up if you've actually got this product or not. And you just think, how many would actually put their hand up? And the rush to sort of drive economies of scale and performance can the lose the connection. But when you then something you picked on a minute ago, which is that if you think the amount of money that's being spent on influencers at the moment in social media circles, it's huge amounts of money are being awarded to people to help influence brands and influence others to buy from their brand. For me, like GigCX is kind of that, but on the sports side, you're putting influences in for support, to just say, yeah, I've genuinely got this product, and this is how I've solved it, and then you get that kind of relationship, and you feel like something's a bit more tangible.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that. I
Mm.
always look at I'm a proud father of a 20-year-old boy, and he's the future consumer.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, he's an advocate. I'll call it gamer and
Hmm.
electronic junkie. That he has ideas and knowledge that can lead towards resolution. And so if you think about the business needs of how can you connect a consumer to those individuals that are very knowledgeable and passionate about a business and a brand, if you can create a platform that connects the two, that
Yeah.
allows towards a speedy resolution, and then does it in a cost-effective manner that also addresses a workforce need within a business. And that to me is nirvana. That's what,
Mm,
the business needs there, the consumers needs there, the actual buyer of a client or customer's products. If you can
mm,
connect them in an environment that leads towards a resolution, you're addressing a significant amount of needs, again, both from the consumer side and the business side and the employer side.
mm,
I think that's what GigCX, and I think Limitless as an organization, I do feel is a world leading organization that has then provided that platform.
mm,
And it's very intriguing, and it's new, and it's emerging, and it's a cog, we'll call it, in that experience world.
mm,
Much like you said, whether it be social media or IVRs or the traditional ACD, there are things that disrupt, and I think GigCX is an area of disruption that should be leveraged and should be listened to.
mm. Do you think there's a I'm always intrigued because sometimes you can get drunk on your own happy juice, right? But
Mm.
do you think as a somebody in the industry that understands how all these things work and you've got your close connection with your customers, do you think there's a stigma associated with gig CX and because of the word gig, or do you think there's anything that's not clear in the industry, and how do you think that goes down?
Yeah, I think it's a lack of awareness and understanding. I think gig is
Right.
a very broad term. You have the we'll call it the food delivery services and transportation side of the world that obviously is brought and caught up in a lot of PR and press
Mm,
as it relates to ensuring that individuals, are they contract workers versus employees. But I think we need to double click down on gig, and we need to better understand what is the role and the solution of gig within your operating environment. Are the individuals really dedicated and doing this work on a full-time basis? Is it their only sense of income? I think that's one classification. And then, as we've referenced in this conversation, you have individuals that are doing it because they're passionate about a brand.
mm,
They actually have another job, and what they want to
mm,
do is just have a platform to amplify their voice, where they want to talk to fellow individuals and consumers that are inquiring or exploring a new product or having an issue with supporting that product, and they want to help and they want to find an avenue where they can help resolve or address certain issues that they have in their head. And so I think that's where, when you double click on gig, you've got subcategories within gig. And I've always advised and encouraged buyers to look at the role of gig in their operating environment, and what are you trying to address. For me, gig is an offshoot of work at home. And that was something that was a very big, significant disruption because of the pandemic. But gig is not here to replace work at home. There's a role for work at home, a human being in a chair, in a scheduled traditional workforce manner. But gig is an element and a layer and a flavor of that
mm,
ultimately, again, can help enhance the customer experience and the business needs and the business experience as well. So I think,
mm.
again, it's further education and awareness and understanding of not a general term of gig, but really diving deep into, what does gig mean for me, as a buyer, or what does, gig mean to me as a provider.
Yeah, I mean, that's really useful way of looking at it. You touched on something there, which was that there are people that it's not their primary job, but also there's this, the amount of people that just want to help. Now, I find sometimes the easiest way to help people understand what GigCX is that everyone's familiar with communities and forums,
Mm,
which creates an opportunity for people who want to help and have got the skills to help to come on when they want, and they're not pressurized to help. They can go at their own free will,
mm,
and it taps into that innate skill or that innate need that people genuinely have in their personality, which is they want to help others. So they see the means to help, and I've got the product knowledge, and here's my perspective. The problems, the the things that community forums perhaps don't have in their locker is they're not a channel that could be relied on in terms of performance, because people are there to be able to pick and choose what they want to work on. So there's stuff that might not be worked on, but they might also uh, you know, give things up halfway. or sometimes there can be rogue conversations, as we all know, on community forums. Things can go a little bit, off piste. So, but the essence of what a community forum is as I've mentioned. But so what GigCX does is operationalizes that, if that's the right terminology for it, to put it into a framework which people are very used to, i.e., response times. There's a need for resolution, and there's actually a financial reward mechanism, whereas community forums don't. All you have is, you might get some swag or some points or something, but you're not actually getting cold hard cash. So what Gig's doing is taking community forums, injecting it with steroids, rewarding people financially for what they do, and the same principles there. Turn up because you can, not because you're scheduled. Answer things if you can, because you've got the skill set, and there's nothing stopping you giving things up if you want to, like halfway through a conversation. So there's no pressure to work, and there's no essentials into management and stuff. And it's kind of like that, for me, is the easiest way to kind of get people to understand what GigCX is all about. Communities on steroids.
Yep.
I think we found our new way of describing it. There you go.
Yeah, no, and I take it even further. Actually, I talk trust is a very important word for me. And you think about, and again, I'm very much obsessed, and we are at VXI with the employee experience and the customer experience. But if you think about what I see as the next trend, it's moving from experience to trust, because trust is an element of resolution. And if consumers are trying to explore and find channels and support mechanisms that they can trust, that is giving them accurate information, that's helping them resolve whatever their business situation is. And I think ultimately, if you look at what Gig does, is Gig as a subset in your operating environment can have another platform that provides a safe platform where individuals can trust that platform to resolve whatever their issue is. And if they can't, then what is the next mechanism, and what's the next avenue? And you want to do that in an effortless fashion. So I think trust is a very important term. And I think that's what Gig does provide. You can connect a trusted source to help you understand your situation and help you move towards a resolution for your situation.
If only you could, like physically manifest trust into something that is objectively measured, because the problem with trust and empathy, which is the words that companies chase a lot, we want more trust, we want to build more empathy, we want more authenticity, but it's very hard to demonstrate that or physically touch something. But if you connect customers who need help with customers who've got the products, and they say, I can help you, I think there's a good way of actually saying we're physically doing something here. And that should play out in feedback scores and things like that. But just that core principle of the thing that I find with GigCX is it's ubiquitous, right? Because everybody that we talk to, either an expert who's providing help for, let's say, one of our brands like PlayStation, right? So you touched on your son being a gamer. So there's people out there that helping others. So on with PlayStation, and being able to, someone say, I need some help, and there's another gamer that says, I've got this, but you can physically make that connection, and somebody's going to walk away with that and go, that's brilliant. But everybody, whether we're talking to the expert or the person asking the question or the client like PlayStation or you or me, we are all customers, so that we can all relate to this, because we put on our work hats and we go to work and we have these sorts of conversations, and we headbutt our laptop all day and make some numbers change on spreadsheets, and then we go and buy something off the shelf or website or something. We have a problem with customer service, and then we put our customer hat on and we go down the customer corridors, as I call it, and we go through these experiences. So everybody can. That's what I mean by it being ubiquitous. Everybody can relate to this, because everybody is a customer of a brand. And I bet there are. Actually, I'll ask you a question, Neil. What if you were to be a gig expert? What brand would you be a gig expert for? What do you have? Who would you say? I love this brand. I've already I'd be able to help others.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it can move across various verticals, right? You think of it as just My mom called me last night because she was having an issue with her cable box, and I said, hey, I can help you. I can actually help troubleshoot that. So that's just a simple cable box. And you think
Yeah.
about how many contact types when someone's cable box just isn't operating, and you power cycle it, you unplug it for 45 seconds to a minute, and you plug it back in and it resets. Again, that's a speed to resolution. And that's a
Mm,
very common, contact type within the industry. So I would say cable is one area, can be represented by many, many brands out there. I'm certainly a super user on Apple as well. And so you think about some of the
mm,
the knowledge that I have, it's probably limited if I were to compare it to my son. But again, I can help. I can help individuals, and I can help them look to resolve. And you think about washers and dryers and refrigerators and TVs. As you said, we're all consumers. We all
mm,
have a level of knowledge in our head, and this is where,
mm,
for me, how do you connect a consumer's situation, no matter what the vertical is or the brand? How do you connect it to the easiest and the most efficient and effective means to resolution? And that ultimately is where I think it should always start with self-help. You should meet a customer in their channel of choice. Then you
mm,
may move from self-help into a non-agent assisted, as you said, the introduction of a
mm.
bot or whatever it may be. And then this is where Gig emerges now as a
Yeah.
new and interesting channel of, okay, well, if it can't be driven through self-help in my channel of choice and it can't be non-agent assisted, don't make it difficult as I move through these respective stages. But if you can now connect me in a new channel of Gig, where I'm actually connected to an individual in an effective and an efficient means, can resolve my situation, I'm all in. And that to me ultimately drives an NPS. I want to promote this brand because they made it easy, they made it effective. I had a high degree of trust in contacting this business and this brand, and it helped me resolve my issue. And that's what more businesses want, that more
I want
customers
that.
want that,
Yeah.
more employees want that.
And that goes on to that point I was saying that people are spending gazillions on influencers because they want that halo effect of people saying, yeah, this brand's brilliant. But what a better way, in the support world. So, well, there we go. So you could be an Apple expert, be a white goods expert, and a cable box tech support expert. We'll keep that in mind because we'll see as Limitless expand. So as we get to the end of this, what I've heard, which has been a fantastic chat, which is about how GigCX provides trust. It provides a new channel, a new way of connecting to brands, and the introduction of it in the right way, so that you have this concept of self-help or identification of what people need, and then from that making a routing decision or something to bring Gig in as a viable option to help people. So for those organizations that are listening to this, or if you were to offer your advice about Gig, what advice would you give them to allow them to look at this as a viable option, as given your industry experience and what from what you validated about the whole model?
Yeah, I think my advice would be, what's the role of Gig within your operating environment?
Right.
I've got the privilege of leading our CX advisory group, our consulting organization within VXI, and we spend a lot of time talking about what is the new and emerging trends in technology
Mm,
happening in the marketplace. And we often spend a lot of time talking about Gig and where does Gig fit within your operating environment. So if you
mm,
if you think about this next generation environment of leading with self-help and looking at non-agent assisted,
mm,
typically it would then immediately jump to a human being in a chair somewhere in the world. And I think Gig is now a new and emerging trend. And if you think about some of the headwinds that we all face in the economy right now, cost is important. Cost, quality, and resolution, and your promoter scores are all key elements that every buyer has to face.
yeah.
I think trust is important, with a BPO partner. You've got to find the right individual that's willing to have a dialogue and a discussion around an emerging trend like Gig, and then have a environment where you can talk about what's the role and how can you truly, in effect, weaponize this for your consumers. How can you provide this option in a cost-effective manner, and where does this fit within your support network in order to help provide customers choices and a high
Yeah.
degree of trust to move towards resolution. So that to me is what I would strongly encourage people. Find trusted colleagues that you can sit down and talk about it. What are the representative examples? What does Gig mean? Double click down on Gig, and what does it mean for your business, your brand, your industry, and then more importantly, your operating environment, both from the employee experience as well as the customer
Mm.
experience, and how can it unleash value? That would be my strong advice to people.
There you go. Okay. Well, For anyone listening out there and they want to, they can come straight to us, or they can come straight to you. So how do they get hold? Because you're bringing gig into your operating models, right? And you're talking to organizations and putting it out there as, like you said, a new and emerging stuff. So if they want to know more, how do they get hold of you, Neil?
Yeah, certainly. So I'm Neil.Rae, Neil.Rae at VXI.com. You can always shoot me a note, but certainly VXI.com is the website. But feel free to shoot me an email. I'm always willing to make time to have conversations with any buyer out there in the marketplace. And again, we pride ourselves in sharing and having these types of conversations. And for me, gig is here to stay. It's more about how you can apply gig into your operating environment, and we'd be more than happy to have that conversation, whether it be by way of the consulting side of the organization or perhaps as a solution side. But very happy to contact and reach out to anybody that wants to have a chat.
Good stuff. Well, I think the fact, just to finish from my perspective, an organization the size of VXI and the consumers and the customers that you have, and introducing this, like I say, with the ability to help people consult on why it might be viable, but putting it alongside the traditional model is where things could work best. So for those that are considering this and think, how do I work this in a normal model, then talk to VXI, because that's how they can help. If you want to know everything just about pure gig, that you can come to me if you want to, or go to Neil as well. So there we go. So it's been a fascinating chat. I think the big word I remember from all this is trust, right? So like I say, that if only you can quantify it, but maybe that's what gig allows you to do. But here we go. But anyway, we'll be on our soapbox for a time. So if you want to know more information, go to limitlesstech.com. We produce a white paper every year, which is the future of GigCX and what's going on. We call that the GigCX report. That's available to download if you want some more information, and that talks to the industry leaders, it talks to customers, it talks to experts, and we get all their opinions as to how they view gig and what they think is going on in the world going forward, and whether they think it's here to stay and why. There we go. So that's a wrap, as we'll call that one. So we're all done. Neil, thank you for your time. Really appreciate it, and it's been fascinating talking to you. And we look forward to the next show as we walk GigCX around the world.
Cheers. All the best. Thank you.
Thanks, Neil. Take care.
Yeah.